Uber has suspended testing of autonomous vehicles after what's believed to be the first ever fatal crash involving a self-driving Uber car. 49-year-old Elaine Hertzberg was hit by an autonomous vehicle last night in Arizona and died. Police say the car was in self-driving mode, but that someone was behind the wheel at the time. They say the vehicle was traveling about 60 kilometers an hour, and a pedestrian walking a bike stepped into the traffic lane rather than using a crosswalk. Police have obtained video of the collision from a number of camera angles inside and outside the car. Uber is putting its experimental programs in Phoenix, Pittsburgh, San Francisco, and Toronto on hold. John Simpson is the Privacy and Technology Project Director with Consumer Watchdog. John, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
What do you make of this incident and this death?
Well, it's a very tragic occurrence, but it's something that all of us who've been watching these developments have expected, I think. The problem is that the autonomous vehicles, the robot cars, are being rushed onto the roads too quickly under the guise that they'll ultimately provide greater safety. And in fact, they're raising whole new safety challenges, and I think this tragic incident shows that.
How much could this set back the program that Uber is trying to put on the road?
Well, you know, I mean, I think these things have to deploy in a very cautious, deliberative way, and Uber was rushing too fast. We've called for a national moratorium on all testing on public roads for all of the developers' autonomous vehicles until we completely understand what went wrong here. What this highlights is the difficulty that the vehicles have on relating and predicting human behavior. And you have a lot of that in everyday traffic situations. So, you know, I prefer to think of this, I mean, it's not exactly that it'll slow it down. It may make everyone focus appropriate attention on safety as we try to go forward.
John, when your group has made this, demand for a moratorium on this kind of testing, what kind of response do you get?
Well, we'll see. I mean, Uber has already suspended all its testing. Now, to some extent, that I hope is a responsible sort of response. It may also just be public relations and window dressing. We think it needs to go farther than this because there are many other companies out there doing the same kind of testing. And one of the problems here is that Arizona sort of staked itself out as the wild, wild west where these companies could test without any real safety regulations in place, compared conversely to California, where there are some fairly stringent regulations requiring all kinds of reporting, requirements showing that how often the vehicles disengage. And so you get some sense of the state of the technology. Everything in Arizona was very opaque, and this really only rose to the level of notice because it was a fatal accident.
Who has the final say in this? I mean, does the Department of Transport weigh in on something like this?
Well, the U.S. Department of Transportation's National Traffic Safety Board is going to be investigating this. I believe the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration will be investigating. We think that needs to happen immediately. Unfortunately, at the national level, the push has been on to try and remove what are perceived to be regulatory barriers to developing autonomous vehicles, which is exactly the wrong way to go. We, in fact, had a letter going out today with a group of about 25 other organizations concerned about safety to Secretary of Transportation Chow saying, no, your job is not to deregulate. Your job is to institute the necessary safety standards. So perhaps this will serve as a wake-up call.
Testing is going on in many cities, including some in Canada. You mentioned at the beginning of this that the companies are in a rush to get this going. Why do you think they're in a rush?
I suspect that some of them can see greater profits. I mean, Uber right now, they pay drivers. Many of the drivers don't think they pay them enough, but if they could put a fleet of Uber taxis on the road without any drivers that got summoned by an app and didn't kill very many people, they might say, well, great, this is all the money we're going to save. So I think that's the sort of approach that some of the technology companies are taking. And, there's the old Silicon Valley adage of, move fast and break things. That's okay if you're putting software out in so-called, beta mode. Mm-hmm. You can test Gmail, and it's not going to kill anybody. And they've taken some of that sort of put it out there and test it ethic that works with software to the robot cars. And that's dangerous because it can kill people, and did.
Privacy and Technology Project Director at Consumer Watchdog, John Simpson. John, thank you very much.
Thank you.